Roguelites are characterized by permadeath and procedural generation and have taken many forms over the years, but your mileage may vary in terms of quality, so if you have no idea where to start, here are some of my favorites, having taken a look at a bunch of these. Want to kill some heroes? Skul the Hero Slayer puts you in the shoes of a lowly skeleton warrior, having to rescue the Demon King after he was captured and the kingdom's forces decimated, where our protagonist has a trick up his sleeve. The central mechanic here is that you're able to use various skulls which grant you different abilities and can be swapped out in combat to utilize the maximum range of your capabilities. Mind you, these are not the boring old fantasy classes like Archer or Barbarian, but includes Werewolf, Clown, Minotaur, Mummy, Rockstar, Davy Jones and more. In many ways, this is a distillation of modern roguelites, where they have taken inspiration from games like Dead Cells and Hades to create one of the most compelling games, since the fluid action is complemented with an extensive upgrade system as you get more powerful from run to run. It is also the debut title from a South Korean team of developers who started on this while in school, so it's an amazing accomplishment to say the least. The success of Slay the Spire sparked a whole new generation of roguelite deck builders to the chagrin of some people, where I came across it when it released in early access and knew that they had something special on their hands. Now, I agree that cards are not the most exciting things, since the turn-based nature and lack of flashy animations doesn't immediately give you that dopamine hit, but it brought to the forefront how strategy can be enjoyable as you craft the perfect deck. You see, it's not only about adding cards and bloating your deck, but upgrading the right ones and removing the fluff used together with the randomized relics that you come across, which makes this interesting. The four classes play very differently and are fun, so even if it's not usually your thing, do give this a shot. One of these is not like the other, since PlateUp is not a platformer, not a top-down action game, and not a deck builder, the three most common types of roguelites, and instead applies roguelite elements to a whole other genre. This is a cooking and time management title that is most similar to Overcooked, where you have to prepare various dishes and serve them on time, but where you get the choice of randomized upgrades to purchase in between levels. You do get the equivalent of in this game if you fail to meet your customers' expectations, but it's so good and nails that one more run gameplay loop. The caveat, however, is that this is best with some friends, resulting in the same level of chaos as Overcooked, and is relatively underappreciated, all things considered. On paper, UnderMine is a roguelite that studied all of the other great games in the genres and have learned valuable lessons from there, being a dungeon crawling title where you are thrown into said location by the king to find and stop the source of earthquakes. The funny part is that every new peasant that you play as looks identical to the previous one, but gets the added benefits of upgrades from the hub area. Before you dive in again, get more gold, die and retry. This felt most like Rogue Legacy to me, but as a top-down game instead of platformer, with a number of challenge and puzzle rooms, as well as the upgrade system, less the randomness of characters, but its excellent execution made flesh. We cannot talk about the past 5 years without mentioning Dead Cells, one that is right on the brink since its 1.0 launch was in 2018, but this insanely successful title put developer Motion Twin on the map, so much so that they grew and split into two teams, Evil Empire, which continues development on this game, and Motion Twin, which is presumably coming up with new ideas. The past 5 years have been very kind to this game and its players, with a host of free and paid updates, being one of the most content-dense experiences out there. The timeless, full pixel art look continues to be awesome, where the blueprints and upgrade system using collected cells just keeps you playing, since there's always something new to unlock. With the most recent Return to Castlevania DLC, I do wonder if this has the potential to be perpetually supported, but it's great for a reason and is a must-play. Like Slay the Spire, Vampire Survivors created a whole new subgenre in roguelite in what I call the Bullet Heaven roguelite, where in contrast with Bullet Hell, where you're avoiding swarms of enemy projectiles, you are instead spewing out these attacks to destroy hordes of enemies, which has led to easily more than 100 clones of varying quality in 2022 alone, but you cannot beat the original. It is relatively simple in presentation, progression and even controls as compared to some of the other games on this list, but that might have led to its mass appeal. being something that almost anyone can pick up to get an insane kick when you slaughter enemies by the thousands. There's a conspiracy theory that this is to get people into Musou games, but give it a try anyway, where its low price is a low barrier to entry and has 2 DLCs as of recording to add more content. I was impressed by Slay the Spire, but did not get as hopelessly addicted as some other people like my wife, where instead my game of choice is Monster Train, one that perhaps isn't as mechanically sound, but is easier and more accessible in my opinion. You have to reignite the fires of hell, fending off the angelic host as your locomotion barrels towards its destination, where the variety in clans and their corresponding strategies is a draw. They all play very differently, and you're forced to mix 2 at any one time, opening up your mind to the synergistic possibilities, with the higher Covenant ranks adding to the challenge and replayability. Pacific Rim has lived rent-free in my head since 2013, so imagine my delight when Into the Breach released in 2018, a turn-based tactics roguelite where you command giant mechs to fend off giant insects. Sure, it's not exactly a 1:1 comparison to Kaiju, but the parallel is there, where, at the time, it had the novel idea to show you all of the moves that enemies were going to make so that you could attack, push, pull, or use special abilities to negate them. Like Pacific Rim, many of the battles felt like a desperate fight for survival since difficult choices had to be made, and I often found myself surviving with just 1 health on each of the 3 mechs. In contrast to the other games on this list, you will not be able to grind out upgrades and get better, but where progression comes in the form of new mechs, which comes in groups of 3, but once you get the hang of the default teams, you can customize your own squad as well, and it's deeply strategic and enjoyable despite the short play sessions. Rogue Legacy changed my life, setting me on this path of loving and covering indie games, so it's no surprise that Rogue Legacy 2 ranked very high on my Game of the Year list for 2022. Watch that video if you're interested to know why, where this is a bigger and better version of the original that still retain key elements. The gimmick here is that with each death, the new character that you play is the next generation of this family of heroes, having to spend your family's inheritance to upgrade the manor, then set out on an adventure in the ever-changing and shifting world. Like Skul the Hero Slayer, variety is the key thing here, where the various combinations of character classes and traits interact in interesting ways. There are 15 classes from Chef to Mage and Valkyrie, all with unique special abilities, where traits like Dwarfism or Gigantism will affect how you play. The sequel is much larger and more open, despite retaining its run-based roots, where they've just updated the game with its final content patch named Swan Song, so it's the perfect time to get this. Hades was my game of the year in 2020 since the godlike roguelike just feels awesome to play, where time just melted away when I was engaged with this game. You play as Zagreus, son of Hades, who has to fight his way out of his father's domain, calling upon the power of your Olympian relatives to help along the way. Sure, it's not as varied or random as some other roguelites, but that's its appeal to me, where you can master this game over time. They also took roguelite storytelling to a whole new level, setting a new industry standard as they slowly revealed the narrative after every death, adding even more of a reason to play again on top of the upgrade systems. Combat is the highlight, where weapon variety and boon combinations were fun to experiment with, so yep, it's awesome, and check out that previously mentioned Game of the Year video here.